Elsa Merrick did not usually keep company with politicians. Her world was parchment, quills, powdered pigments, and curves of ink shaped as carefully as spun glass. Yet the mayor of Brookhaven insisted that the new town charter, the first revision since the Civil War, be written by the finest hand in 3 counties. Elsa had scoffed at the flattery, but civic pride, a sizable fee, and a chance to use vellum rescued from a Boston monastery convinced her. So on a bright September morning, she found herself standing behind a polished walnut table in the council hall, the charter displayed like a royal decree. The ceremony unfolded as these things do: speeches about progress, oblique jokes about taxes, music from a brass quartet. Elsa tuned out the pageantry, monitoring humidity, watching sunlight crawl across her work. Her greatest fear was not boredom but disaster, an accidental blot, a splash of champagne, or worst of all, clammy hands smudging the ink before it set. Mayor Gideon Huxley, a stout man known for booming laughter, rose to speak last. Elsa smiled behind her spectacles, partly because she liked the mayor's warmth, partly because his impending stroke of the pen meant her portion of the task was nearly done. Huxley lifted the gold-nibbed pen she had provided, dipped it into the crystal inkwell, and pressed his signature in dependable loops: Gideon M. Huxley. The audience applauded. He bowed, stepping back. Then his face drained of colour. The mayor's hand gripped the table. A shudder travelled through him, toppling 2 champagne flutes. Moments later, Gideon Huxley crumpled to the floor. The hall erupted, gasps, hurried footfalls, the quartet's instruments clattering against chairs. Dr. Penrose, who happened to be seated near the aisle, knelt to feel for a pulse. Elsa stood immobile, overcome by the jarring sight of her dignified mayor sprawled like a felled oak. Only when the doctor barked for water did she stir. Someone wrenched windows open. Another dashed for smelling salts. Yet despite cold compresses and shouted encouragement, Huxley lay unconscious, breath shallow, skin damp. By afternoon he was carried, still insensible, to his home across the square. The papers immediately declared it a stroke precipitated by excitement, and the town council postponed celebrations. Elsa returned to her studio with a headache, the inkwell still half full in her bag. Of the charter she felt oddly protective, as though the mayor's fainting fit had cast a shadow across her craft. Before locking up for the night, she studied the signature, searching for a blot that might have upset him. She found nothing out of place, save the faintest glimmer of green where black should have been dead matte. She blamed the gaslights and went to bed uneasy. Morning brought no improvement in the mayor's condition. Worse, 2 aldermen who had crowded around the table after Huxley collapsed now complained of nausea and metallic tastes on their tongues. Dr. Penrose was puzzled. Elsa read these tidings in the Brookhaven Courier and felt the hairs at the base of her neck rise. Green-black ink, metallic taste. She walked to her cabinet, where glass jars labelled verdigris, lampblack, cinnabar, and orpiment waited obediently. Verdigris and orpiment, both notorious for arsenic and copper, both capable of producing greenish casts. She uncapped the ceremony inkwell and sniffed. Ink usually offered rich but benign scents: gum arabic, iron salts, sometimes clove oil. This sample smelled sweet, almost garlicky. Arsenic compounds carried such sweetness, an irony nature devised to mask poison. Elsa's pulse hammered. Someone had tampered with her ink. She needed proof. In her apprentice years, she learned a trick. Mix suspected ink with hydrogen sulfide water. If arsenic existed, yellow precipitate would bloom. She cobbled together the test on her workbench. Within a minute, a swirl of sulphurous yellow burst like lurid fireworks in the beaker. There was arsenic, and there was no doubt. Elsa leaned against the wall, breath shallow. 3 possibilities twisted around her mind. 1, she had somehow purchased contaminated pigment. 2, careless handling in her studio had tainted the ink. 3, deliberate sabotage. Only the third explained why the mayor fell moments after using what she had tested safe before the ceremony. She could not stay silent. Yet an accusation of attempted murder against an unknown culprit, levelled by a calligrapher, might invite ridicule or worse. She thought of Gideon Huxley's jovial face, now pale upon a sickbed. She buttoned her coat and set out for Penrose's clinic. The doctor, wiry and silver-haired, greeted her with weary red-rimmed eyes. "I was about to visit the mayor," he said. "He's grown more unresponsive overnight. If you're here to sign a get-well card, you're welcome to ride along." "I'm here about the ink," Elsa blurted, surprising them both. In his carriage, she explained her test. Penrose listened, fingers drumming the leather seat. "Arsenic?" he repeated softly. "It would fit the symptoms: fainting, gastric distress, garlic breath. But an ink pot? Extraordinary." At the mayor's house, they found Sheriff Malcolm Price posted outside the bedroom door. Penrose introduced Elsa and summarized her claim. Price's thick brows knit. "Miss Merrick," he said, ushering them into the hall, "you're telling me the ink on the charter is poisoned." "Not the charter, Sheriff. Just the ink the mayor used. My own supply was pure until yesterday. Someone substituted or adulterated it." Price exhaled. "Doctor, can you test the mayor's blood? I can send a sample to Boston, but results will take days," Penrose said. "In the meantime, this young lady's analysis may be the best lead we have." Price frowned at the closed bedroom, behind which the mayor's laboured breaths rasped. "Very well. Where is the ink now?" "In my satchel downstairs." They gathered in the kitchen, where Elsa reproduced her test under the sheriff's watch. When the yellow precipitate bloomed, Price's scepticism surrendered to grim acceptance. He dispatched a deputy to guard the charter in the council hall and secure every inkwell on premises. "Miss Merrick," he said, "we'll need a list of everyone who had access to your table yesterday." Elsa supplied names: the town clerk, 2 aides, council members, caterers setting glassware. The list was depressingly long. The sheriff scratched notes. "Until we find motive, every last one is a suspect." That evening, rumours slithered through Brookhaven. Some spoke of an anarchist plot, others of crooked land deals. Elsa returned to her studio, determined to narrow possibilities. She replayed the ceremony minute by minute. Only one person besides herself had actually handled the inkwell. Jasper Finch, the new deputy clerk, had fetched extra blotting sand and reorganized place cards while Elsa escorted dignitaries to view the charter. He was polite, eager, and, Elsa suddenly realized, unknown to her until a week ago. She waited until morning, then walked to town hall. Inside, nervous staff bustled under the deputy's stern eyes. The original inkwell had been sealed as evidence, so new jars dotted desks like hasty mushrooms. Elsa spotted Finch hunched over ledgers. She greeted him congenially. He smiled, though tension twitched in the corner of his mouth. "I hope the mayor recovers," Finch said, voice wavering. "Awful business." "I've brought the sand shaker you borrowed," Elsa lied, setting down an identical tin. "Can we talk?" He glanced around. "I'm swamped. Perhaps later." "Your handwriting's unlike mine," she continued, leaning closer. Yet you're versed in penmanship. You hold the quill properly. You studied calligraphy, didn't you? Finch hesitated. A year with the Boston School of Design. Elsa nodded slowly. Then you know formulas, which means you understand arsenic inks. The clerk's face went ash-grey. I don't know what you mean, he whispered. Sheriff Price stepped from a corridor, as arranged. Finch bolted, overturning his chair. 2 deputies caught him near the stairwell. From his pockets they produced a small vial labelled verdigris oil. In the interrogation room, an office borrowed from the assessor, Finch's story emerged in ragged sentences. He had grown up in Brookhaven's poorer quarter, where absentee landlords neglected tenements but enriched themselves through municipal favours. His father died of lung rot blamed on mouldy housing. The mayor chaired the oversight committee, yet levied no fines. Finch believed Huxley's genial facade masked corruption. When the charter revision promised fresh tax breaks for developers, Finch resolved that the mayor must be stopped. I meant only to sicken him, Finch insisted. A day's illness would delay the charter. I used a mild dose. Mild, Sheriff Price thundered. You've put 3 men at death's door. Finch stared at his manacled wrists, tears glistening. I was careful. I thought... His voice broke. Elsa felt conflicting storms inside. Horror at the act, sympathy for his grief, anger at such reckless revenge. She rose. Sheriff, may I speak privately with Mr. Finch? Price allowed it reluctantly. Jasper, Elsa said gently. Ink is unpredictable. You study design, not toxicology. There is no mild dose of arsenic for an ailing heart. He swallowed. I know that now. Whatever the mayor's failures, you have nearly killed innocent men who share none of his power. Finch's shoulders collapsed. I don't want them to die. Is there an antidote? Dimercaprol can help, she said, repeating Dr. Penrose's hope. But we must act quickly. Finch gave them every detail. Concentration of arsenic, method of suspension, time of substitution, during Elsa's brief absence to greet the quartet. That information allowed Penrose to tailor treatment. Over the next 2 days, antidotes flushed the poison from the mayor's system. The alderman responded even faster. By Sunday afternoon, Gideon Huxley opened his eyes. News of his awakening rang church bells during evening service. Elsa knelt beside his bed, holding the charter he'd never finished reading. Huxley blinked at her, voice raspy. Did I foul your beautiful letters? No, Mr. Mayor, you signed perfectly. Tears pricked her lashes. You just picked up the wrong bottle of ink. He managed a faint chuckle that devolved into a cough. Then I suppose I owe my life to your steady eye, Miss Merrick. The sheriff visited hours later to take the mayor's statement. Huxley listened to Finch's confession in silence, fingers steepled. Finally, he said, Brookhaven breeds anger where hope has failed. Perhaps I contributed. If I recover, Sheriff, I'll review those tenement complaints myself. Finch was charged with attempted murder, but the mayor's words at the arraignment surprised the crowd. The young man acted in misguided desperation, he told the judge. I recommend leniency that he might serve the town, not rot in prison. The bench, swayed by near-unanimous pleas for mercy, sentenced Finch to 5 years deferred, contingent on public service and medical supervision. Some grumbled, yet most saw wisdom. Punishing poverty-born wrath with cinder blocks rarely mends the cracks that spawned it. Elsa returned to her studio and, after weeks of hospitals and hearings, finally spread the charter across her drafting table. Under lamplight, the mayor's signature gleamed. painfully literal proof that ink carries history's weight, sometimes blood-heavy. She poured out the contaminated bottle and scoured the glass thrice. Still, memory of its sheen clung to her thoughts like verdigris to copper. Winter descended, layering white dust over Brookhaven's slate roofs. Elsa delivered the restored charter for a quieter signing, this time with fresh ink she mixed under lock and key. The mayor, cheeks still pale, signed again, then let others add their names. Silence replaced applause. Each person contemplated the modest miracle of pen strokes untainted by malice. When the council dismissed, Huxley lingered. "Miss Merrick," he said softly, "you see letters as art. I have seen them as dull ordnance numbers. But those numbers shelter families, or abandon them. Teach me to read them as you do." Elsa's eyebrows rose. "You wish to learn calligraphy?" "I wish," he replied, "to feel ink's consequences before legislation, not after." So on Thursday evenings, the mayor visited her workshop amid jars of pigment and books of scripts. He fumbled copperplate loops and muttered at italic serifs, but gradually his stroke steadied. They spoke of governance and guilt, of revenge misguided, of how arsenic, invisible, might just as easily lurk in law. She charged him no fee. He paid in policy drafts revised with conscience. Spring thawed the river, and Finch, cleaning litter along its banks per his sentence, paused whenever he spotted the mayor trudging up Elsa's front steps, portfolio under one arm. Perhaps he wondered at such a sight, a man of power humbling himself to ink's discipline. Perhaps that sight nudged regret into resolve. He wrote Elsa once, requesting lessons by correspondence. His handwriting, neat though shaky, bore earnestness no poison could erase. She mailed back practice sheets, instructions, and forgiveness. By midsummer, Brookhaven's tenements were slated for renovation, funds diverted from superfluous statues. At the granting ceremony, the mayor offered neither brass quartet nor champagne. Instead, children from the river district presented scrolls painted with poems about clean water. Elsa recognized Finch's careful mentoring in the rhythm of those letters. Late that night, she walked alone to town hall. Stars shimmered overhead, tiny archives of ancient fires. She unlocked the great oak cabinet where the charter rested. Drawing it out, she ran a fingertip over the edge, where her flourishing capitals captured the town's lofty ambitions, and its cautionary footnote writ in invisible stains, "Beware what the pen may carry." She whispered a promise that her inks would remain pure, an oath heavier than any civic title. Then, in the hush of a building usually packed by day with clamour, Elsa Merrick uncapped a quill and added a single coda at the charter's margin. A small calligraphed knotwork shaped like a serpent biting its tail, an emblem from medieval manuscripts meaning vigilance. No words accompanied it, yet anyone who studied script would see both warning and triumph. Threats may coil in the commonplace, but eyes trained to beauty can still spy the venom. She dried the mark, locked the cabinet, and stepped onto the moonlit square where Brookhaven's future unspooled in invisible lines, waiting, like her letters, for someone to fill them with ink worth trusting.